So I'll start out with a simple one. Why retire now?
It's just like the timing of it was perfect almost. Contract, uh, as many of us have mentioned, this contract changes happened at the end of last year. The sport kind of was changing over the last couple of years, and you know, I thought, where could I do? What could I, still accomplish? What do I want to still accomplish? But also at the same time, I wanted to see, providing for my family at the same time, being there for my family, the commitment that it takes to be the best of the best, and some of the changes I was going to have to make at that point in my career for me to feel like I gave myself a shot to be the best of the best just wasn't something I think I was still willing to do. And it just kind of worked out where kind of everything fell into my lap. This is the right time, I think, you know, decide to retire.
And I think Robert, you were curious, like how much does the financial stuff have to do with this, and how much is it sort of wanting to take on a new challenge? Like if you were, if Nike came to you and said, "Hey, we'll pay you exactly what we paid you in 2018 to compete in the 2025 season," would you have taken that, or would you have still decided to retire? You think?
I think I would have considered it strongly. I think I probably would have leaned towards it, honestly. I mean, at the end of the day, um, I'm not a it's not 2018 where I don't have a 2.5-year-old. I don't have a wife to, support. I don't have a mortgage to pay. 2018, I was, just Clayton Murphy, with, Ariana as a girlfriend type deal. So it was a little bit different of a situation. Now it's, I got daycare to pay for. I got, Disney trips to pay for. I got diapers, food, all this stuff that, it weighs on you. It's different things. And then, at the same time, you can, still provide for your family and not be, on the road the way that I think I was going to have to be on the road. I was going to have to probably do a few things differently, I think, at this point in my career and make some changes when it came to not necessarily coaching, but, some camps, maybe to do some altitude, some different training groups, just some things different to kind of mix it up and put myself, where I felt like I was confident in what I was doing. And I just wasn't sure if, you know, especially with where the financial support was going to be, if that type of commitment was something I wanted to do and, be away from my family. So
You talk about the changes in the sport. Like, what do you mean by that? Just how much faster the 800's gotten in the last couple of years, or like I listened to your,
I mean, yeah, you got to run, you got to run, 140 to be competitive now. No, no, it's just, it's the circuit isn't the same from a like just pure enjoyment perspective. And, and I've talked to a couple people who, were on the circuit with me, at the beginning who have retired through it, or were still on the circuit at the end, or whether that's, agent, et cetera, and just the enjoyment of travel and, how things work and the treatment of some of the meets and how they treat athletes or, the logistics of getting to meets, the logistics of just getting into meets or, the logistics of, going from meet to meet. It's a way more of a grind, I'd say, and like less enjoyable. And part of that probably is a little bit on me of just, like I said, getting a little older and not wanting to be away from home, but also just the crowd is different the way, crowd as in the people at the meets as far as like athletes and agents and meet directors and stuff. It's just a different vibe. It's just not as as enjoyable, I think, as what it used to be. And that played into a factor of like, if I'm going to be on the road, if I'm going to go to Europe for 2.5 weeks, like I'm not going to want to be there. I'm going to want to be home with my family. So if I'm not going to want to be there, I need to enjoy what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm not going to reach my full potential. Like that's pretty, easy to map out. So it's kind of like one of those things where, trying to take a calculated, you know, equation in the sorts of, if I do this, am I going to be successful? And if I'm not going to feel like I'm going to be successful, then it's like, it's not fun to me either.
Can you explore that a little bit more? Is it just because the people you're dealing with are different? They're not maybe some of the friends you made coming up through the circuit, or is there something different about it that you think the vibe is less enjoyable?
I mean, I think a little bit is that, for me, I kind of had the first half pre-COVID and then COVID and then post-COVID. I almost split my career down the middle with COVID, and it is a different, type of atmosphere almost, you want to say, on the circuit than what it was pre-COVID. Part of that is just because of the structuring of, some of it financially isn't the same from, just pure like taking care of athletes from a meet perspective. And some of that's, out of some meet directors, control by just the budgets they have or, sponsorships, et cetera, in the sport. And then, like you said, a lot of those people who I, pre-COVID was spending days and hours and, tons of time with are no longer in the circuit. And, I was kind of an older guy who didn't connect with, maybe some of the younger crowd, maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but, yeah, it wasn't the same. I text Robbie, my agent, and I was kind of just like, I'm going to miss when we used to go down to breakfast and just sit at breakfast for like 4 hours, and just talk and talk and about Delta status and, how we're going to travel to the next meets. And I remember like a story of like us trying to figure out if we could charter a PJ from like the meet out in Českohervar outside of Budapest to Monaco because, half of us and dual management wanted to do it and, front the money and split it. And then the other half didn't really want to do it. And we were trying to figure out if we wanted to do it or not. Like those kind of stories are just, used to go down now, like you go down to breakfast, you eat breakfast, you just walk right back to your room and everybody watches Netflix in their rooms now. Nobody really like, just hangs out at breakfast for hours upon hours, it felt like. So just little things like that, for me, I needed to make it enjoyable just from a pure perspective of being there and from a success perspective.
I didn't realize that it was blaming on the phones. It could be, but everyone didn't have Wi-Fi, internet access. Their favorite TV shows when they're in Europe, they had to actually.
And you used to travel to Europe, you'd have to like figure out how to put the SIM card in. Like, I remember at the very beginning, like Eric Sawinski used to teach me how to put, get a second phone with a thick. Either you switch the SIM card, or you have a different phone. Now it's like T-Mobile is like so easy, it's just free now. It's just, it's easy, but yeah, I mean, it's just different. Like we used to, going out after races used to be, drag people back to the hotels, like, from whether or not you're just exhausted or whether or not you're, inebriated, you're getting dragged back to the hotels by people and stories and stuff. So, just, yeah, it wasn't the same. It isn't the same, but that's, people enjoy it now. So I'm not going to say anything. So
You were born 5 years too early because with Grand Slam track, you could have most of the meet. You could have 6 big races or 8 big races all near the U.S. first class travel, and you'd be one of the few athletes in your event group. I mean, I like seeing Hawker, Kerr, and Nagoose, obviously, but I'm not sure about the double format because there's not a lot of overlap. Most 8 guys are terrible at the 15, and vice versa. They're not really that good at the 1500 guys aren't that good at the 8, but you and maybe Wanyoni and a few guys could have cleaned up.
I thought about this the other day when I was watching. I was thinking about how Robbie Andrews, Leo Manzano, Andrew Weeding, and myself could go at it if we hadn't just overlapped by like a year or two there. When even if Leo was just like a little bit younger, like the overlap of like us 4 guys going out to meet like that would be unbelievable. If you had like those 4 guys who we were almost a perfect overlap of going at it at that race would be really cool to see. But I agree. It's almost like a weird. It kind of like you're talking about a little bit with like the 800 speed now. It's almost the whole sport. It's like it's such almost a science now. Almost I feel like where it's like you gotta run X time at X meet, otherwise Y doesn't happen. Whereas I feel like we used to just race, and I always felt like if you were in the right race at the right time and you were ready to run fast, if the race was fast and you were ready to go, you were going to run fast. It wasn't a situation where it's like I have to run fast every single meet to prove it or, earn my place or, whatever it is. We just went out there and raced to win the race. And sometimes it was quick. And sometimes, sometimes we ran 145, 146 and won the race. And you were like happy with it because you beat good guys. Sometimes we ran 144, it just kind of is what it was.
So you were, one of the best Americans in your event for close to a decade, made 5 world or Olympic teams. Obviously, you got the bronze medal in Rio. When you look back, what's your favorite memory from your pro career?